Welcome to the Little Miss Movies podcast, where two movie-obsessed parents make their 10-year-old watch movies she'd never watch otherwise. This is episode number 11, Hairspray, not the musical. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Little Miss Movies podcast. I am Josh. I am a writer and apparently a musician. I've been doing a lot of that this weekend. It's really killing me. Who knew? Who knew what I got myself into?
He's aspiring apparent musician.
Apparently. Got another podcast coming out soon. I'm a podcaster now. That's the thing I do. A lot of. Nonstop. Really can't see straight. And I have a daughter who is 10 years old and is Little Miss Movies. But we're not gonna get to her next, because now you're gonna meet my wife.
I am Christina, and I am his wife. I am also a writer. I write movie star biographies. In fact, I have a book on Jane Russell coming out in this June from University Press of Kentucky. I am also a librarian and an archivist, and I am the mother of the 10-year-old Little Miss Movies.
Hi, I'm Gable. I'm Little Miss Movies. I'm 10. I'm in 5th grade. And I like reading, watching movies, watching TV, playing video games, and writing.
Cool. So it's February. It's Black History Month. And, we talked about how we wanted to handle it because we think, it's important to sort of talk about a different type of movies and also to really, like we've done with the movies we've chosen so far, like talk about movies that had sort of a profound effect on our childhood, and in our lives as well as the world. But we thought, like, what is the perspective? Could we get an outside perspective? So we went to some of our friends and had them pick movies for us, movies that they thought, Gable should see, and they came back with very, very strange movies. They're not the movies.
I don't know that they're strange movies.
They're not the movies you would expect.
What, were you expecting them all to say "do the right thing"?
I mean, somebody you would think. It's cool. So the first of our friends that we turn to is Ubah Mohamed. She is a television writer who I actually just worked with on an amazing TV show that we are not allowed to talk about because it is super secret. But it is super cool. Gable, is it super cool?
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, cool. Right. And then she was a writer on the Legends of Tomorrow over at the CW, the superhero show. She's done all kinds of super cool stuff. Let's hear the movie that she picked, and we'll be right back in like 2 minutes.
Hey Josh, I wanted to give you this little blurb about Hairspray and what it meant to me as a kid. When I was growing up, I would watch a lot of movies in New York City and on Sundays, and I happened to come across Hairspray, and I and Divine and the entire story with Penny and the gang, and it just, to me, it made such a huge significance because I didn't realize that, honestly, as a child, like how racism was prevalent in the world. And for me, I learned a lot about life through television and movies. And so Hairspray was the first movie that I saw where it kind of addressed it. And then I got a little bit older and I saw Lean on Me. And I just started to see the world through the filter that the TV had given me. Because growing up in a Somali family, their perspective was different. And I didn't have that understanding. So for me, I really learned about the way the world operated, at least in the United States, from TV and film, and Hairspray was my first introduction to that. And I think it kind of transformed my understanding of fairness and equality and the fact that people were mistreated. And when you're really young, you don't understand those concepts as well, especially if your parents aren't kind of talking about it. So this movie really kind of is a hallmark of my understanding of to stand up for people who are disenfranchised or are going through great difficulties in life, and that sometimes it's easy to sit down and not say anything, but sometimes that's not the right choice. The right choice is to stand up and speak up for someone's rights, even when you feel uncomfortable. And that's what this movie taught me about how to be a Tracy Turnblad, how to stand up for other people who might be disenfranchised in this world, who might be mistreated, and not sit down and just be quiet, to say something, to take a stand. And I think that's the world we're shaping now, and I think we're luckier for it.
Thank you so much, Ubah. Hairspray is a very interesting movie. You know, first of all, Gable, what did you think about the movie?
It was good. I think it was cool that she was able to get onto a TV show. And it was cool that she like gave up her fame to defeat racism, and she succeeded. No, and the crazy hairdo was really funny at the end. That was a weird but very crazy hairdo.
The exploding hairdo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Debbie Harry's exploding hair.
Boom.
Yeah.
So, you know, what's interesting about the movie is, so it's directed by John Waters, who is a cult filmmaker from Baltimore, Maryland. And, you know, he's kind of made his life making what are called outsider art films. He's sort of obsessed with the whole concept of outsider art. Outsider art, as you could probably guess, is
Art by an outsider.
That's right. You know, so he started out, you know, the movie that he's sort of best known for is a movie called Pink Flamingos, which is actually, I think, his second movie. There's another movie
Pink
with
Flamingos?
It is called Pink Flamingos. You're not allowed to see
It's
it.
not what
It's
really,
literally
it's not what you think it is.
It's literally possibly one of like maybe 5 movies that I'm like, that's a lot. It's a lot to take for me, let alone for you.
Although we do have a poster hanging up in our kitchen.
We do have a poster hanging up in our kitchen for it. Right there. We'll show you after.
Yeah.
But so what he sort of did is, you know, he was friends with lots of weird people. You know, people who just didn't fit into the mold of the time he came from. And, you know, when he was growing up in the 50s and 60s, everyone sort of fit into like a cookie cutter shape. And, you know, he didn't, and his friends didn't. And they all bonded over it, and they all kind of made themselves into something different. And then they made art from that. What's interesting about the movie is it's actually about sort of how outside art becomes inside art. Does that make sense?
Doesn't look like it makes sense.
Doesn't look like it makes sense. Yeah. So the thing about rock and roll that you need to remember is that rock and roll evolved out of music that, if you actually trace its roots, goes all the way back through the blues, right? The blues is like turn of the century America, through like the 30s and 40s, then through jazz, and then eventually to rock. But then it even goes back before that, and a lot of it actually comes from Africa. Like, it actually has its roots in, you know, sort of like basic tribal songs, tribal rhythms. Like, there's all these things. So that's music that literally came to America, that was brought here, that because it was the music of the Africans, it was seen as something totally separate and something totally different.
Well, and something that like carried itself, you know, through as Black people were enslaved, it like carried through all of that. So the people, you know, the enslaved people will be living on plantations and have these like musical oral traditions. So it's just something that kind of endured in spite of everything. And
it became part of how their culture survived. You know, because when they were brought over here, they were split up and they were divided to a point where people didn't know who was who and who was from where, what was going on anymore. Right. But the music sort of allowed them to still find, you know, their identities to some degree. So then what was happening sort of in mainstream, quote unquote, white America in, say, the 40s and the 50s was very, very safe, very kind of middle of the road music. It's very, like, it's not bad music, but it's certainly very soft, right? It's not particularly racy. There's no, like, they're all very sweet songs.
It's the Andrews Sister songs that I love.
And you know who's the white guy who made everything change? Is there a white guy who's old from way back then with black hair and a fancy suit?
And he danced around. And he was a big part of your Girl Scout camp, your virtual camp last year.
Yeah. So Elvis Presley broke rock and roll sort of to the masses. But if you actually look at what Elvis did, a lot of it, like a huge amount, was actually music that were folk songs and spirituals that came from the slaves and from Black culture in general. right? So that music, that sort of outsider music, started to become insider music. But here's the thing. Even once it became white, it was still outsider music to adults. Because they were like, this is the corruption of the innocent. This is disgusting. This music is the devil's music. Right? What the movie is about is actually sort of the next phase of that. So the parents already didn't like rock and roll. They already thought rock and roll was evil.
Except for you. You guys don't.
No, I mean parents back then.
Back then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Parents back then. So sort of the next evolution of that is when African Americans and Black Americans started to reclaim their rights to these songs. And you started having more and more successful acts who were actually, singing their own music, writing their own music, being a part of it while they were Black. The white sort of, not just the parents who were turned off by it, but actually the white establishment, like the white like levers of power that kept everything working, really didn't like it. It made them really uncomfortable. And what that did is it made everybody sort of on the rock and roll side. It made everybody kind of into outlaws. And that had sort of a weird effect. And that's what the movie is about, right? Like the movie is about this idea of that if you believe in the spirit of the music, that spirit involves loving and believing in everybody around you and being supportive. And so all of which is a very roundabout way of saying a guy who started out by making very strange, very specific outsider art made what looks like a really mainstream movie that's about outsider art and about how outsider art is the lifeblood of our culture, of our society.
That makes more sense.
Does that sound better?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
So yeah, and that's the thing is like you have different, every generation hates the following generation's music. Like it's just sort of, I think, how it is for the most part. Although less now. Like something happened in the 60s, like the late 60s, where the music just kind of sat. And like for the most part, like the stretch is a little bit easier, I think. I think music for like people who like adults, like our parents, maybe not my parents don't count. My parents are anomalies.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think parents of people our age who grew up in the 60s managed to kind of stay into music like a little bit later and a little bit longer, I think, than before that. Everyone else kind of freezes in place in those like 5 years of their teen to adult years. Mm-hmm. Whereas everyone else sort of like you can make it from 65 through like 81. You get like those, they have like those 16 years of straight rock and roll.
No, I think my parents, I know my mom certainly hated some of the bands I listened to, but not because she thought they were devil music. I think she just thought they weren't good. But then other things she liked. My parents went to Guns N' Roses concerts a few years back. So, yeah. It's not as extreme. Although I did get into a fight with my 7th grade health teacher who said AC/DC was the devil's music. So, it's still...
With Bon Scott or Brian Johnson?
She didn't know the difference. She did not. This was...
that's really a finesse argument, but still.
She didn't know the difference. I'm sure. She probably held up the Highway to Hell album cover just because Angus has horns on it.
One of the things that you mentioned, and one of the things that's such a big deal in the movie is because Tracy is not skinny and beautiful, like perfect beautiful, like a Barbie doll. She's like a more realistic hero, right? How did that make you feel, like seeing somebody who feels more like a real person?
It was good because mostly like there's like the people are just like they're like perfect, so it was different and it was cool.
Is that something that you see in movies regularly or not so much?
No.
Like can you even think, like even Harry Potter is they're all beautiful. Like they're all very beautiful. Even what's his name with no nose? It's pretty good looking.
That's Ray Fiennes. He's beautiful.
Ray Fiennes with no nose.
Even with no nose, he's beautiful. And I like that they I like that they don't make a huge deal out of it. I mean, like the mean girl does, but otherwise everybody just like rolls with it, and it's not even that much of a thing, which I think is kind of nice.
They actually do the opposite, which is the mean girl is a dick about it.
Yeah.
Right? And everyone is like, what is wrong with you? Everyone
Yeah.
else is just like horrified.
They can't see it.
Like, what's the matter with you? Like, can't you see she's great? She's great.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, again, that all goes back to this idea of sort of the outsider, right? That you, like, the most sort of desirable thing, it's ironic, like, that when you're an outsider, like, you like being an individual, and you like being who you are, and you like being singular, while simultaneously desperately wanting people to accept you and love you for who you are. And this is a movie that stands, like, specifically right in that spot, right in the middle of that, you know, where she she doesn't care. She's not going to change who she is, but damn, does it feel good that
everybody just accepts her.
Yeah.
You
know,
and I love that she's so confident. I really do. And just accepts who she is.
Those hairdos are very weird, though.
The hairdos are.
Who styles their hair like that?
They did back then, though.
Oh,
we have to dig up some of the photos of Grandma when she was in high school. Oh, Grandma had big hair. Grandma had big ratted sprayed hair. So that's how they did their hair back then. They woke up really early every day.
Well, that's the bit. So the opening credits. I don't know if you remember the opening credits, but the opening credits is it's just kids just like slathering on the hairspray.
Like one of them is like eating, and she says the thing of hairspray, and her person's just like.
Yeah, even me in the 1980s, babe, had probably put some holes in the ozone.
But that was
like hairspray.
But even like that opening credit thing, and sort of throughout the rest of the movie, one of the sort of other neat things about the movie is when you watch a normal movie set in a historical time period, no matter when it takes place, it'll always be the most beautiful version of that time. It'll be sort of like everything is pristine and gorgeous and beautiful. Everything in this movie is actually like it was, so everything is hideous. Like the colors are sort of like all like gross, sort of like that weird, like somewhere between pastel and neon, right? Like it's not quite a pastel and it's not quite a neon, yet it sort of has all the negative traits of both simultaneously.
It's somehow muted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everything, you know, like, and the kids for the most part aren't, like even the kids in that opening montage, but then the kids and the rest of the cast, like none of them are, you know, drop dead gorgeous. Like everyone is just sort of a normal person.
Except for the mean girl.
Except, I don't,
because she tries very hard.
Yeah.
To be perfect.
But even she doesn't want to. Like she's sort of stuck in it because there's the scene where Debbie Harry, where her mom is making her rehearse.
Yeah.
And she hates it. You know, and it's not this that she thinks she can do it, it's that she hates doing it. But it's not fun. And like, what's the point of dancing? It's a pop quiz, Gable. What's the point of dancing?
To have fun.
There you go.
Yeah. What I think was interesting about like Ubah's comments was, you know, she grew up in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So, and her parents were from where? Her parents were immigrants.
They're Somalian.
They're Somalian. So I think her upbringing, she wasn't raised by people who had grown up experiencing extreme racism in this country. And so she said as a kid, she wasn't even really aware of it because then, you know, like the neighborhood that she lived in was multicultural. And so she didn't actually see it. And so, you know, I think maybe she had heard about it, but hadn't at that point in her life when she saw this movie actually experienced racism, you know, at least not overtly. Is that correct, Josh? Mm-hmm. So something she was like aware of, but even as a woman of color or as a child of color hadn't actually experienced. And so when she watched Hairspray, like this was kind of her introduction to it. So I thought, I mean, I did think that, you know, it was, you know, and like, again, like we weren't, like Josh said, you know, like you said at the beginning, like we weren't, I don't know what we were expecting people to think, but I think it also puts a fine point for like people in our age range didn't have a whole lot of options to see like positive representations of themselves in film. And only in now it's still, fairly limited. So I did think that was like, because the other movie that she talked about was Sister Act. And she said, as a kid, she didn't want to see these really heavy commentaries on race. She just wanted something fun. And that was like the nice thing about Sister Act, was that she could look on the screen and see somebody that looked like her, and it was just fun. But I also think with something like Hairspray, it's kind of amazing that John Waters can take a subject, which is pretty darn heavy, but make it fun to watch, right? Because you enjoyed the film, And, it's, I mean, when the movie came out, it was only like 25 years after the events had taken place. So when it first came out, like we weren't even that far removed. And honestly, at this point, like we're 50 years removed from it, and look at what this country's going through now. So I think it still is pretty relevant, even today.
Well, and that the movie, and again, like that I think like as a creative person, as somebody who makes money making art, sort of the lesson of this movie, for me at least, is that, and it's, I guess it's common sense to some degree, but like we have the opportunity, but also the responsibility. Like when you have the ability to tell stories that are actually about something important, you take it. And I think he managed to take not just the studio's money, which awesome, but he managed to sort of use everything that he has built for himself in terms of his relationships, in terms of how he knows how to make things feel authentic. And again, that idea of what does it feel like to be an outsider who wants to be inside, to tell this story that he really gets into, and it feels like bizarre for him, especially bizarrely naturalistic. Like it really feels real. A lot of his movies, Gable, have this sort of dreamlike, is it dreamlike, nightmarish, somewhere in between. Surreal. I guess we'll go surreal. It's a little bit of both.
Surreal
feeling to them. Because we were talking about, you liked it so much. Your mom and I were talking about like what are the other John Waters movies we can show you, and the answer is none John Waters movies.
Maybe Crybaby.
I mean, it does have Iggy Pop in it. In a bathtub.
Crybaby.
In a bathtub naked.
And Tracy Lords.
I mean, it's great.
But yeah, I mean, I do love that he made a film, that has this social commentary that's still relevant, and yet it still has Divine in it, playing Tracy's mom.
What did you think, Gable, of the fabulous Divine?
What did you think of Divine?
Like the actor or the character?
The whole thing.
All the above. The whole package.
Divine. The whole thing. Like, could you tell it was a man?
No.
Really? So the whole time, until like we pointed it out, when he shows up as a male character later on?
Yeah. I did not know that.
Really? I think he would.
He did a really good job.
I think he would have been, I think he would be pleased. Somewhere Divine is pleased.
He did a good job. And the character was kind of complicated because, like, at first she was like, "Oh, I hate this show," and then when she's on it, then she's like, "Oh, I love this show," and it's like, "What?" But like a second ago, you hated the show.
But
like,
when she realized
why?
it could benefit her, and when she realized I was gonna, make her daughter a star and have people pay attention to her, then she was okay with it.
Oh yeah, okay, this show's awesome, I guess.
Yeah, Divine is in, I think this is Divine's last movie with John Waters, because he passed away shortly thereafter. But Divine is in everything like John made from the beginning,
I think so,
up until here, and they had this amazing relationship where Divine was his muse, sort of sarcastically and in a real sense too.
And sincerely.
And sincerely. Yeah, no, they were best friends in high school. And Divine was sort of just like a schlubby dude. And they were pals, and then found this personality, found the character that he wanted to be every day of his life.
And was willing to do anything on screen.
Anything.
I don't even know if we should tell you.
No, terrible things.
We won't tell you what he does on screen.
What? What does he do?
Terrible things.
What does he do?
Oh, such terrible things. Terrible.
What?
Not terrible things. We can't do it. It's kids.
Why?
It's a kid-friendly podcast.
It's a kid-friendly podcast.
You can tell me after.
We'll tell you after.
We'll tell you after. You can do an internet search. It'll ruin your life. Just ruin everything.
Yeah.
So like the themes of like segregation in the film, and then there's, you know, I don't know, the scuffle, the kind of race riot. I don't know if race riot's the right term at the amusement park. Like these were concepts you were familiar with, right? Like things that had happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, did you think they were? I guess. Could you relate what was happening in the movie to what happened over the summer? Like, did you see the connection between them?
There's police brutality in both of them.
There is police brutality in both of them.
Yeah.
And there's a giant riot in both of them.
What, when you think about the fact that the movie was 20...
Came out in 88?
So, I can't do math. 30 years ago?
Over 30.
Why do we keep watching stuff that like predicts the future?
I don't know that it predicts the future, honey. It's just that we keep just going in circles. Like we keep not moving past, you know? So it's not that it's predicting the future. It's just that this is how this country has been for a very long time, and we just can't move past it. And I don't know. I mean, I certainly probably naively thought we had been moving past it. I don't know if you did, Josh. I think you're more cynical than me.
Not at all.
You didn't, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, where we are now shows that no, there are people that are just as gung-ho as ever. Yeah, and I think it was, and we talked about in 1992, we had the riots here in Los Angeles. I think we talked about it before. And so this movie is, a few years before that. So it just goes to show just how much hasn't changed. And I think it's when you want to, tell these stories, I think it's easier to get them out there when you're making it seem like it's not a commentary on now. Does that make sense? So he's, telling it through this era of 25 years ago when the Twilight Zone is tackling these types of subjects. It's through science fiction, or when Star Trek is doing it, it's science fiction. Am I?
No, you're right.
Am I blathering?
No, you're right. No, it's I guess that's what I was trying to say.
And I think
that is what I was trying to say.
So I think it's John Waters is able to get the funding by staging it as something in the past. But even making it about, again, you make it about dancing. Like you make it about dancing, and nobody realizes that it's actually about racism. Oh, and going into this movie, because I saw this movie when it came out in the theaters, and going into it, I did not know what it was about. And the first part...
You assumed it was about Hairspray?
Yeah, I thought it was about dance. I mean, I thought it was just going to be whatever John Waters' version of a TV, American Bandstand show in the 60s was. And so, when the film takes that turn and becomes, what it's about, that was not... I mean, I was not expecting that at all. So, go John Waters.
Well, yeah, and, historically, movies about race are movies about race. They're treated in a very different way. They're presented in a very different way. They're very serious. They're very thoughtful. And again, which is one of those things where we were talking about, when we asked for suggestions, why we were sort of because this movie is the race stuff is so good in it, but it's a stealth. It's like a stealth bomber.
It is a stealth bomber.
You don't
and
realize
good on
until
him.
It's there.
So when you were in kindergarten, your elementary school was they were going to do a production of Hairspray. So there's like pared down kid version. So you ended up doing Alice in Wonderland the next year, I think. So your kindergarten year, they were actually going to do Hairspray, which your dad and I thought was pretty cool. And the parents threw a fit.
Why?
They thought it was
irony. They thought it was irony.
I don't know. I guess they thought I don't know. I guess they thought we were living in a post-racial world where I don't know. But yeah, they thought it was too adults or too I don't know. They thought like introducing the concepts of racism to this multicultural school was. So they ended up not doing it. And they did like 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah, they did 101 Dalmatians
instead of Hairspray.
They talked about a bunch of dogs instead of racism.
Yeah.
It's like the slaughtering of dogs is like way more acceptable than discrimination against people.
Or way more useful. They think is a more useful educational tool.
No, apparently, yeah. It's not about it. Oh,
I do wonder.
I still am like mystified. Yeah, I'm still mystified.
I do wonder how much of Hairspray getting made was because of Dirty Dancing. Because Dirty Dancing came out a year before.
That's right.
I mean, it's like a little tight schedule-wise, but like, it's pretty, like, Dirty Dancing was such a huge hit and cost nothing.
What studio did Hairspray? I don't remember, even though we just watched it.
Oh, I don't know. Because Dirty Dancing was, what's it called? Was Canon, wasn't it? Wasn't it Canon Films?
Mm-hmm. It was their unexpected blockbuster.
Oops. Dirty Dancing, Gable, is a movie about dancing. It's in the 60s.
We watched it.
Oh, we watched it. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you've seen Dirty Dancing.
Nobody puts baby in the corner. That was the big lesson that you learned there.
I didn't like it.
You didn't like Dirty Dancing?
No, remember?
Why? Was there too much kissing?
Yeah, I got mad.
But what about when nobody puts baby in a corner? You thought that was okay? Did you like the dancing?
What about when Jerry Orbach said stuff and then was in that commercial for 42nd Street that I think is delightful?
That you can see in the show notes of episode 3 of our podcast.
You're going out there and nobody. You're coming back a star.
I mean, so, after, watching this, are there some, lessons learned? Are there maybe ways that, you can kind of approach how you interact with people? What?
You said approach, and I was like, wait, approach what?
I don't even know.
Being a dance champion.
What?
Gable, so when you think about having watched the movie, you think about what was in the movie, and when you think about Ubah's reaction to it when she was little, are there things that you can look at in your own life and in your own interaction once we're allowed to leave the house in 6 years? Once we're allowed to leave the house and interact with people, are there things from the movie that you would take and sort of look at in your own life as lessons to be a better Tracy Turnblad?
So don't be racist and don't
Don't be racist.
That would be one.
That'd be one. Well, but it's actually not about. But that's the thing, is it's not about her not, what she does isn't that she's not racist. It's that she doesn't let other people be racist. That's actually what she's doing in the movie.
Yeah, and that's one
when people are racist, tell them to stop.
Yeah, that is something.
Is that it?
Well, that's something, last week we did we were working on a Girl Scout project, right? That was part of a journey that we were talking about roles and stereotypes. And when you interviewed me about that, about what we could do to stop stereotypes. And
you said we can prove them wrong, I think.
We can prove them wrong and call people out. And I think I talked to you about how, growing up, that there were people in my family who, maybe weren't gonna, go out and be pro-segregationists, but, certainly used racist language in the house growing up. And, whether people realize it or not, what we say around you kids, you pick up on and it rubs off on. And so there were things that rubbed off on me, that when I was younger, like I would say, and I had a friend who always called me out. Like anytime I said anything that was like racist or offensive, she always brought it up and said, hey, don't say that. That's not right. Because she was my peer and because she was somebody I had a huge amount of respect for, and she was somebody who I wanted to like me and wanted to be my friend, I took note of it.
And she's scary.
You think she's scary?
I mean, I don't know what she does now for a living. I don't want to cross her.
She's a principal at a school. But having my peer like point out this thing like made me stop and look at my family and say, oh gosh, there are people in my family who have these views of the world that aren't right and that I don't want to have. And from now going forward, I'm not going to do this anymore. And it made a big difference. And so I think that's kind of what Ubah says is, being an advocate and pointing it out, I think is something that you can certainly do.
One of the most, and that's why one of the most important things we can do and that you can do, like in essentially any time that you have, the opportunity to talk to people or the opportunity to sort of find yourself in front of an audience, whether it's an audience of one or more, is, to be, is to be an advocate, is to, to help to make sure that people, have that role model and that can actually, be additive to the world. Because the fact is especially that's what the lesson for me, that's what the lesson of the past 4 years is that clearly there's not enough people who are being role models, because there's a lot of people who are perfectly happy to be trash in public. It's bad enough that they're trash in private, but when they start also doing it in public, it's even worse. Because that means that's what leads to, the fall of society, is because once it becomes okay in public, that means you can get away with whatever the hell you want. And that's what they did for 4 years. And that's why, we talk about, even though we're white, being Jewish, it's terrifying. Like knowing, because I grew up around survivors of the Holocaust, and, they were essentially put in the same position that you're seeing now with, what happened over the summer, right? The Jews were just sort of blanketly blamed. They were treated as hostile when they did nothing. They had their possessions taken away. They had everything taken away from them. And part of the thing is that there wasn't anybody who was advocating for them. Everybody just looked the other way. And as long as there's people standing up and fighting, the people who have the power fighting for them, you actually give people a chance.
But even, you as a kid can do it, at a micro level, like my friend did for me. Like she wasn't out, crusading, trying to change the world. I mean, she just did that to me. And that actually made a huge, huge, huge difference in my life, and actually changed my outlook and helped me detach kind of what I was being raised around. Not grandma, but the other people. And that was just one person. And I don't even know, she probably doesn't have any idea, because I don't think we've ever actually really talked about it. But the things that she had called me out on and said to me, when I was, 14, 15 years old, have always stuck with me all these years later. So you can actually make a really big impact in a small way. So, or you can go out and try to do it in a big way as well. But I prefer the small way. Well, you're 10, but every little bit counts. Every little bit, but calling your friends out on their garbage when they bring it up is, something that you can do.
So did you get all that from this super fun movie? Yeah, no.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind
All right.
of.
Well, let's talk. Okay, let's talk about some of the fun things though. So, like, did you like the look of the movie?
Yeah, I did. Again, those hairstyles are crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know who would wear their hair like that.
Again, we're gonna have grandma.
Or
We're gonna
who
dig up-
would wear a giant wig that literally looks like something the Queen would wear and had a bomb in it.
Well, the
Like, who
There are
would do
people-
that?
Debbie Harry would clearly. And what'd you think about like the costumes and the cars and what? You're just the hair.
The hair.
The hair really got to you.
Just notice the hair.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, it's like all it's like that's the main thing of that movie. Besides like the main look of that movie to me is all the hair.
With all the hair.
Those crazy giant hairstyles that went out like 8 feet or something.
I guess we'll have to look at some old. Well, we'll see if Grandma has her yearbook, and you can see her yearbook
Oh,
and
god.
all of the people and their crazy.
All the girls
hair.
have their hair like woo.
All their crazy hair. Yes, indeed.
I like the fun thing that I learned watching this movie that this time that I would have never noticed before and probably wouldn't have noticed unless you pointed out, which you did, is that Josh Charles is in the movie from The Good Wife.
And he looks like he's about 15 in
Yeah,
that
it's
movie.
crazy.
Yeah,
It's very
he's
crazy.
Did you know Penny? That's her only movie.
Oh,
That is the only movie she ever made. And then she disappeared. I think like a couple of years ago, there was like a screening somewhere. And that was the first time John Waters had seen her since the movie filmed. And she's so good.
yeah.
I think it was Leslie Ann
And
Powers.
she had like the jawbreaker. And I was like, is that a grape or something? Like, why was she carrying around a jawbreaker?
Jawbreaker. Do you even know what jawbreakers are?
Yeah, I've tried them once. They're terrible.
You didn't like them.
I have them in my office.
Ah,
Back.
that's right. You did.
I have them all the
You
time.
did mail order jawbreakers. Can I tell our listeners our sad tale
What?
of missed opportunity?
What?
Oh, yeah.
So I know you've heard this story before, Gable, but I'm going to tell it again. So the day before you were born,
yeah.
so I was 9 months pregnant with you, and it was June 8th, 2010, and we had tickets to go see John Waters live being interviewed by
Carrie Fisher.
So two of just my favorite people in the world were going to be on stage together. And we had tickets to go. And earlier that day, your dad on the 101 freeway rear-ended a tractor trailer and totaled his car.
I still don't know what that means, but
What do you mean?
I don't know what totaled his car means.
It
There
means
was
the
no
car
car.
was gone. Like the car couldn't be fixed. There
Okay.
was no way to fix the damage that was done to that
It was
car
a-
and still drive it.
Total write-off.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. And so that evening, so I worked all day. Your dad called me and I like went into labor. Didn't go like into hard labor, but kind of went into labor and felt really weird and off the whole day. And still worked the whole day and took the train home. And your dad just wasn't up to going out, even though I desperately wanted to go see John Waters and Carrie Fisher. We did not go. And then later on that night, my water broke. And then you were born the next day. And so there is a good possibility that my water could have broke in front of John Waters. And it would have been a way for me to be connected to him for the rest of my life, because I feel like that would have bonded us, and that would have been a story he would have told often. Yeah, my water could have broke in front of Waters, and it just didn't happen.
Carrie Fisher.
And Carrie Fisher, who I love, my hero, the first hero of my life, probably besides my mother, was Carrie Fisher. And so that remains to this day just the most missed opportunity of my life, was having my water break in front of John Waters and Carrie Fisher. Yes, I'm still very bitter that didn't happen. Very bitter. And that is my sad John Waters story.
Are we doing the Gable rating smile system thing?
Yeah, I think so. I was gonna say that, like, my last thing is this movie is filled with rock stars and musicians. It's like crazy. So, Debbie Harry,
I
Blondie.
love she is my other, right after Carrie Fisher, she was my next hero, was Debbie Harry.
So Debbie Harry, and then Debbie Harry is her character is married to Sonny Bono, who was the guy who wrote "I Got You, Babe" and sang "I Got You, Babe" with Cher, and also "Needles and Pins," which was then covered and made awesome by the Ramones.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I did not know
oh,
that.
it's great. It's a great song.
I did not know
Their
that.
version is fantastic. Then Ruth Brown, who plays Motormouth Maybelle Stubbs, like she's a soul singer. Toussaint McCall, who's the guy who comes and sings at the when they're having the hootenanny. He's actually playing himself as a 20-year-old, but he's 50. Then you have Rico Kasich, who's one of the beatniks.
Rico Kasich. That's right.
Who's in the band called the Cars.
Yeah.
Who sing the "You Don't Think I'm Crazy" that song.
Yeah.
You know that song? You hear it all the time. It's on the radio constantly. I feel like there's one more.
Well, it certainly ain't Pia Zadora.
And it is not Pia Zadora.
Who tore down. She's the woman beatnik.
When they go into the weird apartment.
Oh, they go into the weird apartment. She has like the long black hair, and then he throws his head through the painting. Yeah. She tore down Pickfair.
It's a studio. Your mom's still very
It's
bitter.
not a studio. It was a home. It was Douglas Fairbanks.
Oh, right, it's their house.
It was their house.
Sorry, you're right.
She tore it down.
And then arguably, Divine. Because Divine put out albums that are amazing.
Divine is a rock star.
Yeah.
Yes.
They have
I will go with that.
punk rock albums. They're great. I have them. They're outside. Okay. Those are all the facts that I got. Those are all the facts I got for you. So, Gable, as we wind down, as per usual, how many of your beloved Gable smiles on a scale of 1 to 5 with no incremental anythings, just 1 to 5? The dog is very wound up. He can't wait.
Yeah, the dog is panting.
Think of this as a drum roll. But in fact, it's really just a dog panting. Out of 1 to 5, what would you give Hairspray?
4.
That's
Only a select few get 5.
That's true.
It's true.
Only a select few.
Only a select few.
Yeah. And then, would you recommend this movie to friends?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it a movie you'd want to watch again and watch with friends?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Would you learn all the dances?
No.
Would you star in a production starring kindergartners?
No.
Why not?
I'm not kindergartner.
What if it was with other 5th graders?
No.
Really? Why?
Maybe. I don't know.
Oh, you would love having the giant wacky hair.
No.
Yes, you would.
No.
Oh, that would be fun. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Oh, you liked when we did your Lucy hair when you dressed up as Lucy
That was
for
fun.
Halloween.
I like my donut bun.
Fun. You see?
I
Exactly.
like my donut bun. That was tiny though.
You would have a blast.
That was tiny because we just cut my hair.
If you were in an elementary school production of Hairspray that the parents didn't protest, what character in Hairspray do you think you'd like to play out of any of the characters?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Pia Zadora.
No. No.
Well, who would you want to be?
I don't know.
What?
I don't know.
Wow, you're so angry about it too.
Because mommy's mad at me. I don't
I'm
know
not
which
mad
character.
at you. I'm just asking. I'd want to be Divine. I'd want to play that role.
I don't know who I'd want to play.
You want to be Tracy
No.
or Penny?
No. I don't know.
Really? So if your school was like, if you were going to audition,
I mean, like, out of the main cast, then I'd say Penny, but, like, just, like background, if not, like, just anybody, then probably, like, a background character or something.
okay.
Yeah.
But Penny.
Yeah. Like, if I had to choose, I would, like,
You want to be in the chorus?
If I had to choose, like, one
Yeah,
of
you
the
wanna be
main
in the-
ones.
You can do anything you want. This is your dream moment. Choose absolutely anything that you want.
Hamilton!
Yeah, it doesn't work. That's not how that works.
No.
No, that's not how that works. Cool.
Okay. I'd be one of the rioters.
So
No.
we got more of these to come.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get better at this. In theory.
Well, we're going to get better at podcasting?
I think podcasting about movies that aren't our picks, I think.
Okay.
It's weird because we have, like, the movies that we pick, we tend to know
Know more about?
I
I do
know
love
them
this
inside and
movie,
out.
though.
No, I do too. I just don't know, like, I don't know quite as much, and I don't have charming anecdotes.
No, I guess
so
I
much.
don't either.
You know what I mean?
Although I do remember being very excited when I saw it in the theater to see a preview for The Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years. That was
The Metal Years or the Metal Ears?
The Metal Ears.
both. Either.
The Metal
take
Ears.
Take your pick. Either one's amazing.
The
Either
Metal
one
Ears.
rocks.
We'll be back in a week with our next episode. Thank you guys so much for listening.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
The Little Miss Movies Podcast is hosted by Christina Rice, Gable Fialkov, and me, Josh Fialkov. We're recorded, mixed, and produced in North Hollywood, California. Series art by Gabo. Episode art by Gable Fialkov. Theme song by Gibby and the Bees. All contents copyright 2021. Valoria Shines Inc. Visit us online for more at littlemissmovies.com.